Hello and welcome to a special segment of Exploring Politics. I'm your host, Peter Rapp, and I am joined today by Jude Husein, a Salle alum, and you are also you work in the Senate. What office is that?
Yeah, Chief of Staff for a member in the Pennsylvania State Senate. So I'm on the legislative side.
That's very interesting. Now, how did you get there from LaSalle? Do you want to explain that path for a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a strong track record in nonprofits across the city of Philadelphia. I pride myself on being a really strong community organizer, really centering community first. And after a few years organizing outside of government, one day I was listening to the radio. I listened to the radio every single morning, and I heard that there was a member that staged a sit-in. And I thought to myself, whoa, I've never heard of an elected official staging a sit-in against government. And I decided, while I think it was my final year at LaSalle, I said, you know what, I'm going to figure out who this member is. And I also pride myself on tracking down anybody that I want to talk to. And I applied to every single position that the Senate had to offer. And here we are in government. I never thought I'd be in government because I like to agitate and disrupt government. But yeah, it's been a journey for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very important part of our political process is the government should include agitation and people that kind of push the boundaries of what we're doing currently as a country. So to go into our first segment area, you're from the city of Philadelphia. You grew up here. What do you think are the city's biggest priorities politically right now? I mean, we have Krasner currently clashing with the DA, with ICE, and we have also the issues with Sherrell Parker. People have issues with the incinerator that is operating downtown and things along those lines. So what do you think about our city's current political state?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. I think we're kind of in flux, right? We have the first woman mayor who has a lot of pressure on herself, and there's a lot of challenges that come with that. We have District Attorney Krasner that's been really leading the fight as it relates to ICE and the presence of ICE. And he's been really disrupting these norms, which I would have to agree with. I think some of our larger challenges that we have as a city, I know Mayor Parker is really focused on clean and safe streets, and she's focused on her housing policy. And these are some of her major issue areas that she's been really focused on. I would say in general, as a city, what we need to focus on is safety, of course, education for our young people, and ensuring that they're a part of the, civic engagement climate and involved in all of these decision making. And I would also say business. We really got to promote our small business corridors and ensuring that, they're front and center because they provide economic opportunity and growth. But I would say as the landscape right now, Mayor Parker has her few key areas that she believes in, that she addressed during her budget address around February. And right now we're waiting to see what City Council decides on the budget and some of her priorities. So it'll be definitely an interesting time in the next few months. I think District Attorney Krasner is one of the most popular elected officials across our city's landscape, as you know. And it is a tough time, right? But I think he's been very clear on what he wants and what he stands for. And that's, in fact, ensuring that ICE does not create mass chaos and havoc and really enforce their brutal practices to our neighbors here in the city of Philadelphia, because that's his jurisdiction, and he's made that quite clear. And I don't think anybody can dispute that he hasn't been on the front lines.
Yeah, I mean, he said that ICE they can't come here and break the law. It's his job to maintain the law, so I think it's a reasonable position for him to take. And the city is obviously very responsive to it. I feel like it's the general attitude of the city that we are the birthplace of America, the American experiment, and we are a melting pot of a city as well as a country. So we really don't want people coming in here and stirring up unrest in communities. So now to move with that to kind of a more national outlook, where do you see the role of young people in the Democratic Party, in the upcoming midterms, and in general within our political institutions?
Yeah, well, we look at history, and young people have always been at the forefront in politics. I think there's been this notion that young people are nowhere to be seen, and they don't care, and they're not as active. But if anything, especially this previous presidential election, we see that young people just have a different way of mobilizing, especially in this day and age. And there is a role for them, just like there always has been. And I think the more and more times we say they don't care, you know, it just disheartens them even more because they are the ones that care the most because their future is riding in the present and in the future. And so I think the role for young people is really multidimensional. They have a different way of organizing, which I really appreciate, right? We have the digital landscape that's really powerful right now as it stands. We saw that especially this previous presidential election of like narratives clashing and really the ability for the not so traditional young person to go out and mobilize in a different kind of way. I also think young people have a space in office, right? And I think elected office, I think we need to see more young people as senior staffers. I think we need to see them as staffers in general because staffers really run that landscape of understanding the system and how to benefit different communities and make it a more inclusive government. I think young people have really an opportunity to show up and show out going into these midterm elections. We have a few tokens across our nation, but we need more. And just because we have one or two doesn't mean the work is done. And so I think young people care. I think looking into the midterm elections and even the upcoming presidential race, I think young people will show up and show out in different ways. There's not one way to do politics anymore, right? There's not that, you know what, we're just going to run this election and that's it. That's just not the case anymore. And we're seeing more and more of that, of what organizing looks like, what mobilizing looks like. And young people definitely have a space in different ways. Yeah, and I think as young people, we have to respond to our obligation to be involved. And I know that a lot of people are on campus here at LaSalle. We have many different politically active organizations that I'm proud to be part of our kind of campus discussion that we have going. So moving on to a question in the same kind of vicinity. Public opinion and getting it involved in the decisions that are being made. I know that there's a lot of questions that people ask about, you know, is what's going on, is the policy that's being passed really what we want as Americans? Is it good for the country? How do you think we get public opinion and the feelings of the people more involved over corporate PACs, big donors, billionaires? How do you think we go about doing that? I think you alluded to it in your previous question about what is the role of young people in today's government and the political landscape. I think there's a few different ways. One, we really have to understand that organizing is a tool that can be used in so many different ways. I think two, ensuring that we hold our government officials accountable, right? We elect these people and then we kind of forget about it. But where's the accountability tool? We even look at city, state, and federal, and it's how are we keeping these individuals accountable? I think public opinion and ensuring that people, not just young people, but people across the board know what the heck is going on. I mean, it's just so much political jargon and it's a complex issue and everyone wants to speak in generalities, but I want to get into the nitty gritty. I care about the specifics of an issue, right? And I think everybody should start caring about the specifics of an issue. So that's another way to look at it and start asking those questions of, okay, you're elected, so what now? Okay, you're a year in, what did you vote on? What are your budget priorities? I tell people all the time, if you want to know about someone, look at their budget. In anything, in politics, in dating, in life, whatever you care about, look at someone's budget and you'll understand their priorities. And I think public opinion, I mean, we've seen for the first time when we look at, you know, Israel and Palestine and what's happening, right? There has been a shift for the first time in our history of public opinion shifting towards Palestinians, which is major. And so these are one of those times where now we can use the different tools like social media. I mean, we saw how TikTok was like a huge issue across the political landscape. I mean, you have to ask yourself why, right? It's because people are starting to ask questions and they're starting to share their opinions and their thoughts, and there's so many of them. And not all of them may be right to you and I, but people have a right to share those opinions, right? So how are we honing in on ensuring that their right is protected and those questions can be asked, right? And so these are a few different ways that we can hold people accountable, but also public opinion and how are we ensuring that people are being held accountable to policies and procedures? Yeah, I think what you talk about with the opening of the American political landscape with social media as well as our traditional institutions,
both of them operating kind of together, kind of bouncing off one another, is very important. I think people are learning a lot about politics they would not have known prior, and it's leading to an outburst of new opinions, new ideas, and bipartisanship of being able to discuss these new ideas is very important. That's what we try to do here on the show, and I know that's what you try to do in your office in the Senate, and I think that's very important. And thank you so much for coming on today. It's been lovely speaking with you.
Thank you for having me.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have here today for our special segment of Exploring Politics. Please follow our Instagram and stay tuned. We'll see you next time.